Corey, we started off with you talking about the infrastructure, and you're covering the infrastructure of New York, and we're describing about, what makes New York tick or what keeps it going. People say the subway, the sanitation, the fire department. But there is one organization in New York City that doesn't get that much recognition.
Right. If this agency did not do its job for a few days, you would definitely know it. Your nose would know it, and you would see trash piling up all over the city. And we're lucky to have Chief Edward Grayson on from the New York City Sanitation Department. Chief, thanks for coming on.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah, so I wanted listeners to hear you talk about DSNY, as we call it, the Sanitation Department in New York City. It's the largest sanitation department in the world, right?
Yes,
it is. And you're a chief now. You're the top-ranking chief in the department, is it?
Yes, I'm the ranking chief of the department currently, and DSNY. We're very proud, very happy to be on your program today to talk about it. So I'm ready.
What are you the chief of? Do you have a particular title? Is it?
Yeah, so basically, I'm the chief of the Bureau of Cleaning and Collection. So every sanitation worker and officer and everything happening out in the street, the day to day, that's my purview at the moment.
I see. Now, the sanitation department being the largest in the world. Now, I know that you were a rank and file, sanitation man on the back of a truck. You're a Queens guy, and you rose through the ranks as one can still do in the sanitation department. And I did want to, But I didn't realize that you would have such a firm grasp as a manager, like on a lot of the numbers and the statistics and the real technical side of the department. And I was really impressed by that because you're a regular New York guy, you're a fast talker, you can communicate really well, but you know the technical end of this. So what I want to do is I'm going to give you a pop quiz right now on some of the numbers of the sanitation department because I was looking up, and some of the numbers of sanitation are very impressive. So first of all, I hope you've studied up. So how many sanitation workers are there between supervisors and people who collect garbage, essentially?
Our uniform head count is somewhere in the neighborhood of 8,000, 6,500, give or take 6,500 sanitation workers, and the balance being uniform supervisors, superintendents, chiefs, etc. So we're nearing around 8,000, depending on what fiscal week you pull in, and outages, retirements, etc.
Right. And as far as the fleet, like how many garbage trucks are there in New York?
Oh, we have. So yeah, well, it's interesting. We have a large makeup of various type, but the traditional ones you see, the rear loaders and the dual bins that are out there curbside every day that the public has the most interaction with. They're the ones that you're most getting stuck behind in traffic for those rare moments. We have about 2,400, depending on again innage and outage on any given asset week. 2,400
garbage trucks. Wow. And then would you say like sweepers and spreaders for like the winter type of snow removal? I mean, it's got hundreds, right? I mean.
Oh yeah, well we have 695 different configurations. We like to be very nimble with the fleet size with regard to how much capacity a salt spreader will have. All those pieces have dual purpose, so they'll do salt and sand for when we're on. Lately we've been doing some barricade duty, which is good on the security details. But we also go out for sand spreaders throughout the off season. But our salt spreader fleet is 695 pieces of varying sizes. We like to get the little ones out there for the tighter streets, especially out in the residential areas, Queens, tight streets out in Gerritsen, Brooklyn, Staten Island's dead ends. And then we have for the mechanical brooms, we like to keep our good number for us. They are our critical piece to keep the city clean, and they take a beating out there because their job is to literally ride with that broom head directly on the floor, trying to sweep up all the litter and debris that's out in the curb lines. So we keep somewhere between 400 and 450 of them. Again, depending, when you're running a fleet size this big, there are ins and outs of those assets, and sometimes we're waiting for the new model year to come out and get some new purchases in.
Street sweepers, right? I mean,
yeah,
huh. Right. This is the whole alternate side that all the city drivers talk about. Moving the vehicle, the sweeper comes through, and the whole thing, right?
Yeah, let me tell you though, you'd be surprised so one of the things that's interesting throughout the winter season is now naturally, you have the alternate side, but when we don't come with that mechanical broom, and believe me, I understand. I grew up. I mean, what's funny is my dad was a sanitation worker, oddly enough, but we lived on an ASP block, and my dad, I grew up with him. My dad dreaded moving the car. He hated it, but it's a necessary thing. When you don't have that broom come down, it is completely, you can see it. It is a complete visual indication of what happens and just the lifestyle of the city.
Right.
It's what it is.
I mean, this is the whole nature of the business, right? Whether it's trash collection or what have you. No one sees sanitation until they don't show up for whatever reason. If it's snow removal and you can't pick up trash or whatever. I mean, that's the thing. It's almost like the invisible, even though we see, we don't think about it. It's like, we flush our toilets or we turn on our taps. Like, we don't know where this stuff, most people don't know where this stuff comes from or goes to. But you only notice it if you don't get the service, right?
100%.
I'm not saying it's a thankless thing, but I mean, in a way, like, you got to do your job or else it's just.
Well, that's part of the running thread that we try to tell our employees all the time is, you have to remember that part of the beauty of the pride of this department and providing that public service day in and day out is that, you're not going to get too many attaboys and attagirls out there. We do our job so well on a daily basis that, it becomes it's an expectation. You just assume that when you put it out, you set out your material for collection, we're coming. Or you just assume that, people talk about litter baskets that are full, but nobody talks about the litter baskets that are empty, which is the clear indicator. That's when you do what I do for a living and all the supervisors and chiefs out there running this stuff in the street, while you're always worried about where the full baskets are and how do you augment service to make sure that, the pedestrians walking have a place to put their litter in their hand. Yeah. You're looking at the empty baskets going, right, we did our job today. Very good. Let's move on. Let's find where the challenge is. Let's pivot if we have to.
Right. Yeah, no one notices a street basket until it's overflowing. And then it's like, look at that.
Exactly. Right. And there's like over 20,000 of them out there. And you only notice the ones that are like, wow, why isn't that empty? Well, why are all those other ones? What are the other 18,000 that are empty doing? Like, right. So clearly we're out there. But it's an interesting thing. When you think of the department's been around for 138 years. It's a lot of tradition. Started in 1881 as the Department of Street Cleaning. 1929 transitions into the Department of Sanitation, and we have an enormous responsibility, and we take it seriously. And in fairness to, we love our brothers and sisters in uniform service. We do nothing but support and honor what police and fire give every day. Corrections, everybody. Listen, this department, the caduceus that we have in our logo, it stands for integrity, and we're civil servants to the truest form of the word. And every day, if there's 8.5 million people in this big city, all 8.5 are creating garbage right now. That's just what we are. We're a consumer town. We have the refuse and recycling and litter that everybody creates is a byproduct of our lives. And we need someone to take it and help us manage that. Yeah. And it's a big undertaking, and we take it very seriously.
The strongest, right?
Yes.
Is that the nickname?
That's the moniker, yes.
New York's finest is the cops.
The finest, yes, and we are the strongest.
Strongest, right. Lifting. Is that what it is?
Yes.
Hey, what is that? You lifted. You did collections. Sometimes you see guys with the weightlifter belts on. How do you get used to lifting all that stuff every day? And do guys throw their backs out? Is that a big deal? Do you give training? What?
It is. We have a training program, and we tell them. Not like it's not like it's not like NFL training camp, but we have an academy, and we teach everybody how to lift from the power zone and use proper ergonomics, and we do a lot of safety messages and roll calls. But in fairness to the workforce. These are men and women who are going out, and they are being asked to do a lot of repetitive lifting in conditions that vary. Not every street is perfect. Their own decision making. You're making a lot of weird decisions. It's funny because most people, I think that the biggest misrepresentation of what you would think to be a sanitation worker is, that's like they just go lift things up. You think all day long on the truck. It is, first off, you have to be a trained commercial driver to drive that huge vehicle that requires a lot of stuff. But you literally are doing complete spatial analysis on any given moment. It's a constant, how am I getting from, where's my partner, where is the public, what is that, what is this condition, and then when you're looking at what you're being tasked to take from the curb or in front of a house to the truck, it's what's the best way to lift that, how am I getting that around this, because let's face it, not everyone, while we talked about alternate side, it is a rarity that our collection crews have an open curb line to just walk down. We're not in some nice suburb area. Right. There's always, you're walking in between traffic, in between parked cars, so all workforce getting hurt is based, and that's why they are in what is definitely known as a hazard-sensitive job, and you could read any of the national studies. Sanitation work is one of the most dangerous jobs in the country year over year, and these men and women are literally everyday heroes. And you nailed it on the intro. It is most people don't think about us, and you know what? In honesty, our persona is right. We're dedicated men and women who want to do our job, want to give you the service that give the taxpayers what they're getting out of us, and we're trying not to be in your way. We hate it when we're blocking you. We don't want to be on the block when you got to get to work. But in all fairness, we also have to. Somebody's got to get it, and we have a limited time window to try to get it off the street for you.
You're listening to WBAI, and we're speaking with Chief Ed Grayson. Ed, this is Sean McDonough here, and I want to tell you, I do a play called Off the Meat about I've been driving a yellow cab for 40 years, and in part of the play,
He's from Middle Village.
Yeah, well, I'm going to get to that. I'm born and reared in Middle Village, Queens. And I said, as a son of Irish immigrants, you would finish high school, you do your time in the service, and when you got out of the service, you took the test for the sanitation, the fire department, and the NYPD. And then growing up in Middle Village, it was always drilled into us, you got to get into the sanitation. And I always thought it was all Italian because I grew up with nothing but Italians. But that was a big push to get the chief, find out when the test was, and to get into the sanitation. And it was a job you looked up to. You know, for immigrant parents, that was a good union job. And to get into the sanitation, it was like, oh, my God, you've made it in life.
It just goes to show you, John, how so you grew up in Middle Village. I grew up in Ridgewood. My whole neighborhood, even in that, so you couldn't. It's still the neighborhood and my whole piece of the same community board, if you would. It was the same thing growing up. All of our fathers were civil service guys, transit. You know, my best friend's father was a trackman, third rail, and you would be indoctrinated into it all. You know, and it was. Ridgewood was an Italian neighborhood for the most part, and German, and I'm German Irish, and it's funny because everybody's dad had some city job or some, and that was the thing. It was this, there wasn't a lot of talk, and I'm okay with it. It was, I love my childhood. I wouldn't change it for anything, but there wasn't a lot of become a doctor, lawyer, Indian chief.
No.
It was get the chief, take the test, and try to do something for yourself. And I got to tell you, I'm very thankful that was how it went because my whole neighborhood embraced that, and I can't even tell you the crop of guys that I hung out with as a kid. Almost everybody's either a cop, a fireman, transit, a bus driver, or went the other way and worked for Verizon, the utilities. Like that's what we were. It was all blue collar people just trying to make their way in the city. And I can honestly say it's nice to go to weekend barbecues and find that everybody's doing okay.
But Ed, your neighborhood is not Ridgewood anymore. It's called Ridgewick. It's a combination of Bushwick and Ridgewood. I mean, listen, right. Did you ever think, because you're right on the border of Bushwick there, and yes. I remember 1977 when Broadway just went up. I was on the M train. And did you ever think in a million years how Bushwick would recover, and Ridgewood, because Ridgewood caught a lot of hell during 77 too, during that blackout. And the recovery, that's only now happening. I mean, it didn't happen for decades.
It's amazing. There are a lot of places. It's good to see. What just goes to show you, it's the ever changing culture of this great city. With regard to the one thing that's always maintained. People need a place to live, and it's nice to see these neighborhoods that were struggling in some cases really start to rebound with regard to business coming back, people trying to people trying to make homes again. It's nice. It's refreshing because when you look at in some of the places that it wasn't happening, and it was just a continued lag. It's really nice. So I like driving through the old neighborhood, and I can honestly tell you that it doesn't feel like my old neighborhood, but it still feels pretty damn good to be there and see all the bustle and see what's going on. And more importantly, from back to more of a professional side, you have a lot of people taking pride in home ownership and property ownership and cleaning in front of their houses, and the places never look better. It's really, it's still congested. I mean, there wasn't a lot of, we were fortunate enough, we had a row house, 20 by 100, Archie Bunker style, on one side, and in a lot of the places closer towards the Brooklyn border were a lot of 3-family, 6-family, but it is really nice to see what's going on. You see a lot of activity, you see a lot of smiling faces in the street. The local precinct over there, the 104, they do a great job. They're doing a lot of community outreach. So I really love being in my old stomping ground, Community Board 5 in Queens, that whole area. And it was fun. I was lucky enough as well. At some point in my career on the job, I got to I had like a command post in that local sanitation garage. It was nice to be able to service where I lived for a little while. And, it wasn't a long time, but it was really nice being that deep into it, being a resident and then having a command post where I can help bring change, bring cleanliness and our service to the neighborhood. It was good. It was one of my favorite times on the job.
One of the big, I guess, command posts is on 58th Street, and I think that there was a guy from Middle Village that died there where the truck, because just up the street from me, the street's named after him. A couple of years ago on 58th Street, there's a huge sanitation place there.
Yeah, that's our main. So that's actually a huge. That complex hosts 4 of our community board garages. Queens 2, 3, 4, and 6 come out of that whole complex. It's a huge multi-block. You've seen it. It's gigantic. Yeah. But that giant building is our department's central repair shop, where we do most of the repairs for the trucks in the fleet, and that is staffed by incredible. We have some of the best tradespeople in the world. These blacksmiths and tinsmiths and mechanics and the stuff that they can do, and they have an award-winning. We have an award-winning. Technology in there where we study emissions because we're running one of the cleanest fleets possible. I mean, our footprint every day is to be out there with heavy fleet, and we have this incredible mission that we try to strive for in conjunction with the mayor's plan, and that's been his policy plan. We're trying to have the cleanest fleet possible, and we have this dedicated team all pulling out of that main hub. Unfortunately, that street the street renaming was for a guy who not only did I know personally, but just a wonderful human being, sanitation worker named Steve Frosch, and he was tragically killed by a mechanical broom, right. And because let's face it, unfortunately, here we go back again. The dangers of the job are that. Yeah. Is that we're in with it's heavy fleet, and there's things that just come up and it's sad, and he was that guy was an awesome. Just on a personal note, Steve Frosch, he's an amazing guy. I knew him. It was a pleasure to know him. I knew him from the neighborhood, and I knew him on the job, and he was an amazing man. It was a big loss for us, and we still grieve. The department still grieves for him. That's the legacy that he has.
You're listening to Chief Edward Grayson with the New York City Department of Sanitation. And Chief, one thing I want to ask, a couple of broader questions, was like when people ask you, like, where does the trash go in New York anymore? You used to go to Fresh Kills on Staten Island, I guess partly, but now that that's closed, and where does it go, all the trash?
Well, it's interesting. So that's one of that's a great question because. It's part of the whole new. So right now you've seen the ads, and we're trying to get people to rethink about the waste stream, right? Because the truth of the matter is that we don't host our own landfills anymore, and we don't burn it in this town, and we basically work with public-private partnerships with vendors who take it to other municipalities that have different regulations to either landfill it or make it waste to energy or do something else. So in essence, we collect all the garbage and we process it for transport out of New York City because we don't really manage it ourselves, except for, luckily, we're kind of getting into, we do composting. We're hosting some of our own compost sites. As you know, we've, over the course of the last few years, we have been ramping up this organics platform, and we have a 0 by 30, which is a policy and a real goal for this agency to push. And the truth of the matter is, it is an interesting thing when you're trying to basically mold behavior change for 8.5 million people who all have lives. Because let's face it,
recycling,
human beings.
Right?
Yeah, I mean recycling. We have the recycling. We have long-term vendor. We need those are all things that have to be reclaimed by a marketplace. When you look at it, recycling just means our goal is to not make it go to a landfill. We're trying to divert from a landfill to make sure that we're getting rid of the material in the most eco-friendly way, a thing that makes a sustainable platform. So when you think about it, we take in a waste stream, we process it, we get it from you, we ask the constituency of this great city, here are the best things you could do to help manage the waste stream that we create, and try to also have some waste equity and make sure that it doesn't all end up in the same community boards. Like we want we're opening up, these marine transfer stations are coming back online where we're bringing local Manhattan refuse to a Manhattan waste shed for processing, and Staten Island has a waste shed.
Even Gracie mentioned got one.
Yeah, like so.
That's
right,
spreading it out. right?
That is trying to be the people's champion with regard to equity. Because the truth of the matter is, it's funny. One of the department's older public awareness campaigns is amazing. It was the mirror truck. I'm sure that if you ever look it up, you'll see it. We put it out in parades sometimes, and it was this love campaign. It was a garbage truck that had mirrored walls on it, right? And the entire premise, really, by this wonderful artist and resident artist that we have, Merle Euclides, and is this whole conceptual thing to teach people, when you're looking at a garbage truck that has mirrors all over it, that you're looking at the cause of your own garbage, right? Like, because let's face it, when people look at litter in the street, you say, "Oh, how come that isn't cleaned up?" Instead of asking the other question, why is it there? Right? It's there because we're here. Wherever people are, we will generate some level of waste that now needs to be managed. And when you think about it, that's why our logo has a caduceus on it, rooted in health, because when the department was really formed, it was to help combat what was, dirty conditions that led to public sanitary concerns. And when you think about management of the waste stream for 8.5 million people, that's why it's funny. And it's with pure love and respect to the men and women who serve this great city as police and fire and other first responders. We may be one of the most outflanked groups against everybody because, today, not all 8.5 million citizens will need a police officer to help them because of a crime or an accident response or a first responder response. And not all 8.5 million people will be the victim of fire or some other thing that you need, the fire department. But all 8.5 million people are creating garbage right now that needs a place to go. Yeah. And that's where we come in, on a daily basis. Yeah. And let
me just ask you, because we only got a couple minutes left, because we're almost out of winter. Just talk for a second about, because you guys do snow removal, and that sometimes gets to be sometimes a controversial thing, a political thing. How have you, how do you manage and strategize the snow removal? I mean, looking back to the old days, Lindsay, and these political nightmares that would happen, and we still have them. Where the snow people
in November,
people's street, right? The November storm, and people's streets don't get plowed as quickly as they'd like, or this old knock that the boroughs got done last, and all this stuff like that. How do you guys strategize snow removal now to bring it up to, like, what is it, 2019 type of mentality? And the fact that you're under a microscope now, especially with social media, that, the minute you don't plow a street, immediately it's all over the world,
Well, you bring up a very good point. I mean, so it's interesting is that humbly, my take on that is we are a victim of our own success. And what I mean by that is that we have been getting better and better. For 138 years, we've gotten better and better. So one of the real running narrative is we rise to the new expectation. And then once we hit that bar, we have to maintain, like everybody else. I would argue that all city agencies continue to rise, and then you meet a new norm. And it is very public. I mean, when you think about the change in the way that just the culture of meteorology and news broadcasts, and that's not a knock against that, but when you only got one weather report when watching Walter Cronkite, everybody waited to see what would happen. Now there are 18,000 channels telling you the weather all day, and the running tagline is there might be snow tomorrow, you may die. Like
right.
and then
so
everybody, there's a buzz created, and then but for us, I mean, departmentally, how do we pivot? We pivot by we're always in R&D. We're always looking for the next best thing. The fleet has grown. Our salt spreader fleet was never as high as it was. And that was in direct, we had the Jonas blizzard, the greatest amount of snowfall in the history of New York meteorology in one singular event where it was, 29 inches in Central Park, give or take. But, we had recorded depths of over 30-something inches in Jackson Heights. And when you think about 3 feet of snow is a lot of snow in such a condensed area. And what we wound up doing then was we went, and after a complete thorough review, was the city and the policymakers at City Hall, and it's great, and the council, they all supported us 100%, saying, what do you need? If this was the greatest amount of snowfall ever and you couldn't get there, what do you need? And this great government body was like, we're going to fund you for what you need. And we got extra holsters, and now that's how we have such a high fleet. So for us, we're continually looking, and we watch the weather all the time. So when you think about it, I can only speak, briefly to the November event. I can honestly tell you that the November event was, as it came out in the after action, a combination of things. One of them happened to be a really inaccurate forecast. Right up until beforehand, we were expecting an up to an inch of snow, mainly on grassy surfaces. I mean, literally within a few hours before it went sideways with regard to the fact that the colder air stayed with the front and it basically became a cheese grater and just gave us 6 inches of snow in a short period of time. But then you look at everybody thought it was going to snow, so they heeded some level of warning and they made their early, the rush, the PM rush started a little bit earlier. We had the schools getting out, and it became this, and then we had a massive closure on a couple of main egresses and main access roads leading in and out of the city.
Well, you
and
need
in the
one
other
accident
boroughs.
on a bridge and it can back everything up.
And when you think about it, and by the way, that's not to do there isn't enough fingers to go around to point blame. I can honestly tell you that it was a complete wow. Here's a multitude of things that all happened at the same time, and that is a real reality because the truth of the matter is once it starts snowing, and this is for every event, that's why we try to be very proactive with our approach. We're out there, we're pre-salting certain areas that are prone to ice up quicker. In the wake of this coming next season, we're doing some more brine applications to get some product down on those roadways. You'll see that the residents in New York City will see that next year, some advanced brining of roadways where it's just liquid we're putting down. And when you think about it, we always take a proactive approach. How do we give the people of New York the service that they want? But when you think about a temporal reality, when I was a kid in Queens with a father who was a sanitation worker, I lived on a dead-end block in Ridgewood, and my friends and I played football in the street for 3 days, and nobody called. Like, how come we didn't get a plow? Because the kids had a place to go play tackle football in the middle of the street. Right. But now we have and it's true, it's changing. The expectations are, and we want to provide that. We want to make sure that you can get yourself to work, get your kids to school, navigate around. We want to keep the buses on time because the truth of the matter is we are saying we agree. We agree with all of the initiatives. We want the safety initiatives. We want less traffic on the road. Well, if we're going to have people have less traffic and have more mass transit and do the best things to make this city great, then we have to continue to rise and get that snow that much quicker. So for us, it's a constant, it's a year-round thought. It isn't like now we're looking at the first day of spring. We're not putting, hang everything up, we're good. We actually have a snow threat, although very minimal, for late Friday, and just in case at the tail end of the front, it was supposed to be some maybe 36-degree. I mean, it won't be non-accumulating, but we're constantly monitoring the weather, constantly looking at strategy, constantly looking at tactics, and coming up with implementation plans to meet the needs of the people.
All right, so we're not out of the woods yet this winter, but almost.
Almost.
So listen, we're going to wrap up, but I did. So you are breaking news today with this. The city's going to start brining the streets, huh? Has that been?
we were approved, and by the way, brining is a very good. It's other places do it. This wouldn't be to naturally replace salt. This is more of that extra layer because what brine does is it helps prevent bonding of ice accretion to the roadway. So we're going to be putting. It won't be widespread, but we're going to start that for next season. In earnest, you'll see us out there. We'll do a bunch of media posts, and again, we couldn't be more thankful for the fact that the powers that run this city, the mayor's office, city council, they support us in what we're doing, and without them and without their support, without the listening to the needs of the community, we'd be dead in the water. So we're really looking forward to what we can do next year as well.
Okay, and speaking of bonding, I'm glad you and John bonded over your Queens backgrounds, and it was a pleasure.
It was great. I love a Middle Village guy.
Pleasure having you on, and very informative. So, Chief Edward Grayson with the New York City Department of Sanitation, thanks a lot for talking to us, and keep New York City clean.